The desert night. The Nevada desert held its breath on the night of September 17, 1964. Inside the Sands Hotel and Casino, the air conditioning fought a losing battle against the heat of 3,000 bodies packed into the Copa Room. The Rat Pack was in town, and when Frank, Dean, and Sammy performed, Vegas stopped pretending to be anything other than what it was, a glittering oasis of excess where dreams and danger danced together under the neon lights. But tonight, something else had arrived in Las Vegas. Something from the East Coast. Something that didn't glitter or dance or sing. Ellsworth Raymond Bumpy Johnson had stepped off a private plane at McCarran Airport that afternoon, and by sunset, everyone who mattered in Vegas knew he was here. Bumpy Johnson didn't come to Vegas often. He didn't need to. His empire was in Harlem, where he'd ruled the streets for decades, an iron fist wrapped in a velvet glove. He was 61 years old now, still sharp as a razor, still dangerous as a loaded gun. When Bumpy Johnson traveled, it meant business. The kind of business that made casino owners nervous and pit bosses sweat. The word had spread to the sands like wildfire. Bumpy Johnson is here. He's staying in the penthouse. He's meeting someone. Nobody knew exactly what brought him west, but speculation ran wild. Was it gambling debts? Territory disputes? A power play against Italian families who controlled the casinos? In the Copa Room, Dean Martin was performing Everybody Loves Somebody to a crowd that hung on his every note. He made it look effortless, the way he always did. A drink in one hand, a microphone in the other, charm radiating off him like heat from the stage lights. Dean had a gift for making you feel like the only person in the room, even when that room held thousands. He didn't know that in less than an hour, he'd be staring down the barrel of Bumpy Johnson's gun. The legend from Harlem, Ellsworth Raymond Johnson, had earned his nickname Bumpy from a bump on the back of his head, a permanent reminder of a childhood injury. But that bump was the least remarkable thing about him. What made Bumpy legendary was how he'd taken over Harlem's criminal underworld and held it for 40 years. Bumpy wasn't like other gangsters. He read philosophy and Shakespeare. He protected his neighborhood from outside predators while running his own operations with ruthless efficiency. He'd worked with Lucky Luciano and Meyer Lansky. He'd mentored Frank Lucas. He'd survived prison sentences that would have broken lesser men. And he'd done it all while maintaining a code, a set of principles that made him respected even by those who feared him. But Bumpy was also a pragmatist. He understood power and how to wield it. He knew when to negotiate and when to eliminate threats. He knew that respect came not from violence alone, but from the willingness to use violence when necessary. And he knew that in the criminal underworld, reputation was everything. That reputation had brought him to Las Vegas. There was a situation, a business arrangement that had gone sour. A casino manager who'd taken money from Bumpy's organization and then conveniently forgotten the debt. Payments that were owed. Respect that was not being shown. These weren't the kinds of problems you solved with phone calls and lawyers. These were the kinds of problems that required a personal appearance. Bumpy had changed out his traveling clothes into a perfectly tailored black suit. His tie was silk. His shoes were Italian leather, and his gun, a nickel-plated .38 special, was tucked into a shoulder holster beneath his jacket. He rarely needed to draw it. The knowledge that he would draw it if necessary was usually enough. He'd come to the Sands because that's where the meeting was scheduled. A private room, away from the crowds, where he could conduct business like a gentleman before deciding whether gentlemanly behavior was sufficient. But when Bumpy arrived at the casino, he was told there was a delay. The man he was supposed to meet, a casino executive named Paulie Rizzo, was unavoidably detained. Bumpy didn't believe in unavoidable detentions. He believed in disrespect disguised as inconvenience. And he believed in sending clear messages about what happened when people wasted his time. That's when someone made a critical mistake. A casino host, trying to smooth things over, offered Bumpy a complimentary seat at the Rat Pack show. Best entertainment in Vegas, Mr. Johnson. Dean Martin himself is performing tonight. Perhaps you can enjoy the show while we locate Mr. Rizzo. Bumpy's eyes narrowed. Being offered a show as compensation for disrespect? That wasn't how you treated a man of his stature. But Bumpy was also curious. He'd heard about the Rat Pack, about their legendary performances, about their influence in Las Vegas. And he'd heard something else. Something about Dean Martin standing up to a mobster who disrespected Sammy Davis Jr. a few years back. That took courage. Bumpy respected courage, even when it was foolish courage. "Fine," Bumpy said, his voice quiet and measured. "I'll watch the show. But tell Mr. Rizzo that when the show is over, I expect to see him immediately. And tell him that I don't appreciate being kept waiting." The casino host nodded nervously and hurried away. Bumpy was shown to a VIP booth with a perfect view of the stage. He ordered a bourbon, good bourbon, not the watered-down swill they served to tourists, and settled in to watch. Dean's territory. Dean Martin owned Las Vegas in a way that had nothing to do with property deeds or stock certificates. He owned it through charisma, talent, and the unshakable confidence of a man who knew exactly who he was and didn't apologize for it. The Sand Hotel was the Rat Pack's headquarters. It was where Frank's power was undisputed, where Sammy could perform without the racial barriers that existed in other venues, where Joey Bishop could get laughs, and where Dean could be Dean, cool, effortless, seemingly drunk, but actually in complete control. The relationship between the Rat Pack and the casino owners was complex. The mob families who controlled Vegas needed the entertainers to bring in crowds. The entertainers needed the casinos to give them a stage. It was symbiotic, but it was also delicate. Lines existed, invisible but real. Everyone knew where those lines were, and crossing them had consequences. Dean had crossed those lines before. When Vic Duca had humiliated Sammy with champagne, Dean had stood up to a made man in front of witnesses. That should have been career suicide. Instead, it had become legend. The mob families had quietly decided that public racism was bad for business. And Vic Duca had been shuffled out of Vegas with his tail between his legs. But that incident had also established something important. Dean Martin wasn't afraid. He understood power, respected it, but he wasn't controlled by it. He had his own kind of power, the power of public opinion, of celebrity, of being able to fill every seat in the house night after night. In Vegas, that kind of power mattered. Tonight, as Dean performed, he was in his element. The crowd loved him. The band was tight. Frank was backstage, ready for his entrance. Sammy was warming up his voice. Everything was perfect until Dean noticed a man in the VIP booth. Even from the stage, there was something about him that stood out. He wasn't watching the show like a tourist or a fan. He was watching it like a predator watches prey, calculating, assessing, waiting. Dean had seen that look before. It was a look of someone who wielded real power in the real world, not the glittering fantasy world of Vegas entertainment. And when their eyes met across the room, Dean felt something he rarely felt. Unease. The show ended to thunderous applause. Dean took his bow, waved to the crowd, and headed backstage. But before he could make it to his dressing room, a casino host intercepted him. "Dean, there's a situation." "What kind of situation?" "Bumpy Johnson is here. He's waiting for Paulie Rizzo for a meeting, but Paulie's hiding. And now Bumpy's asking to speak with you." Dean's eyebrows rose. "Me? Why me?" "I don't know. But when Bumpy Johnson asks to speak with you, you don't ask why. You just go. Business gone wrong." The private room was small, elegant, and soundproofed. It was the kind of room where deals were made and problems were solved away from the prying eyes and ears of the casino floor. When Dean walked in, Bumpy Johnson was standing by the window, looking out at the neon-lit strip. "Mr. Johnson," Dean said, his voice friendly but cautious. "I'm Dean Martin. I hear you want to speak with me." Bumpy turned slowly. Up close, he was imposing, not tall, but solid, with eyes that seemed to see right through you. "Mr. Martin, thank you for coming. I know you're a busy man." "Never too busy for a conversation," Dean said, though every instinct told him to be careful. "What can I do for you?" Bumpy gestured to a chair. "Please sit. Would you like a drink?" "I'm good. Thanks." They sat across from each other, and Bumpy studied Dean for a long moment. "You put on a good show. I enjoyed it." "Glad to hear it. I heard something about you. Heard you stood up to Vic Duca a few years back. Made him apologize to your friend." Dean's expression didn't change. Word travels. In our world, everything travels. That took courage. Or stupidity. I haven't decided which. Maybe both, Dean said with a slight smile. Bumpy didn't smile back. I came to Vegas to conduct business. A man named Paulie Rizzo owes my organization a substantial amount of money. We had an agreement. He's not honoring it. Now he's avoiding me. That's disrespectful. Dean understood immediately. This wasn't about him at all. He was being used as a messenger. Mr. Johnson, I don't get involved in business arrangements between. I'm not asking you to get involved. Bumpy interrupted gently but firmly. I'm asking you to deliver a message. You have access to people I don't. You can walk into any office in this casino without raising alarms. I need you to find Paulie Rizzo and tell him that I'm still waiting, and that my patience has limits. Dean leaned back in his chair. This was dangerous territory. If he helped Bumpy, he'd be involving himself in something that could have serious consequences. If he refused, he'd be insulting a man who wasn't accustomed to being refused. With all due respect, Mr. Johnson, that sounds like something the casino management should handle. I'm just an entertainer. Bumpy's expression hardened slightly. You're more than that, and you know it. You have influence here. You have Frank Sinatra's ear. You have connections. Don't play modest with me, Mr. Martin. I'm not playing anything, Dean said, his own voice firming up. I'm telling you honestly that I don't get involved in this kind of business. It's not my world. Everyone's in someone's world, Bumpy said quietly. The question is whether you choose to acknowledge it. The tension in the room thickened. Dean could feel the conversation shifting from a request to something more dangerous. I appreciate that you came to my show, Dean said carefully, and I respect who you are and what you've accomplished, but I can't be a messenger in a business dispute. That's not what I do. Bumpy stood up slowly. Dean stood as well, his body tensing. Let me tell you what I think is happening here, Bumpy said, his voice still quiet but carrying an edge now. I think Paulie Rizzo is hiding behind you and Frank Sinatra and this whole Rat Pack arrangement. I think he believes that if he stays close to you celebrities, I won't touch him. I think he's using you as a shield without you even knowing it. That's not. And I think, Bumpy continued, taking a step closer, that you're about to tell me that's not your problem, that you're neutral, that you're just here to sing songs and tell jokes. That's exactly what I'm telling you. Then you're naive, Mr. Martin, because in my world, there's no such thing as neutral. You're either with me or against me. And if Paulie Rizzo is hiding behind you, that makes you part of this whether you like it or not. Gun drawn. It happened so fast that Dean almost didn't register it. One moment, Bumpy's hand was at his side. The next, there was a nickel-plated .38 special pointed directly at Dean's chest. The soundproof room suddenly felt smaller, the air thicker. Dean's heart hammered, but he kept his face calm. He'd been in dangerous situations before, fights, confrontations with volatile people. But this was different. This was a man who'd killed before and wouldn't hesitate to kill again. Mr. Johnson. Don't move, Bumpy said, his voice still eerily calm. Don't call for help. Don't do anything except listen to me very carefully. Dean's hand stayed at his sides, open and visible. His mind raced through options. The room was soundproof. Nobody would hear a gunshot. Bumpy could kill him and walk out without anyone knowing until Dean's body was discovered. The casino would cover it up to avoid scandal. Frank would be furious, but Dean would still be dead. I didn't come here to hurt you, Bumpy continued, but I need you to understand something. Paulie Rizzo has put you in a position. By hiding from me, by using this casino and your presence as protection, he's made you complicit. Now I'm giving you a choice. What choice? Dean's voice was steady despite the gun barrel pointed at his heart. You can continue to stay neutral and let Paulie think he's safe here. In which case, I'll have to solve this problem in a way that makes a statement. That statement might involve bodies. It might involve violence that happens in this casino, around your shows, near your friends. Or you can acknowledge that you're already involved and help me resolve this quickly and cleanly. Find Paulie. Bring him to me. Let us settle our business. Then I leave Vegas. You go back performing and nobody gets hurt. Dean stared at the gun, then at Bumpy's face. The older man wasn't angry. That was what made it more terrifying. He was simply determined, the way you might be determined to fix a leaky faucet or repair a broken fence. This was just business to him. Dean's life was just a variable in an equation. You're asking me to deliver a man to his death. Dean said quietly, I'm asking you to deliver a man to a meeting. What happens in that meeting depends on whether he honors his debts. I won't do it. Bumpy's expression didn't change, but his finger moved to the trigger. Then you're choosing violence. You understand that? By refusing to help me resolve this peacefully, you're choosing to let things escalate. Whatever happens next is on you. The logic was twisted, but undeniable. Bumpy had created a situation where Dean's refusal to act became an action in itself, an action with deadly consequences. You're gonna shoot me? Dean asked. Here? Now? If necessary. And how does that solve your problem with Paulie? It sends a message. It shows I'm serious. It shows that nobody is protected. And Paulie will either come out of hiding to attend your funeral, or he'll leave Vegas entirely. Either way, the situation resolves. Dean felt sweat on his forehead despite the air conditioning. His mind worked furiously. He thought about Sammy, about that night with Vic Duca, about how he'd stood up for his friend's dignity. This was different. This wasn't about racism or humiliation. This was about power and money and violence. But it was also about the same thing, being forced to choose between safety and principle. Frank would tell him to cooperate. Frank understood the mob, understood how to navigate these waters. Sammy would tell him to be careful, to think about his family. But Dean had always been the one who did things his own way, who trusted his instincts. And his instincts told him that if he helped Bumpy now, he'd be crossing a line he could never uncross. He'd be admitting that threats worked, that guns were more powerful than principles, that fear was stronger than integrity. He'd be admitting that Vic Duca should have won that night at the Copa Room. Dean took a slow breath and made a decision that he knew might be the last decision he ever made. The one word. Dean Martin looked Bumpy Johnson directly in the eyes and said one word. Brother. Bumpy's gun didn't waver, but something flickered across his face. Confusion, curiosity. What? Brother, Dean repeated, his voice quiet but firm. That's what you remind me of. I'm not your brother, Mr. Martin. No, but you're somebody's brother. Somebody's son. Somebody's friend. You're a human being, not just a gun and a reputation. Bumpy's jaw tightened. That's a nice sentiment. It doesn't change the situation, doesn't it? Dean took a risk. He took one small step forward, toward the gun, not away from it. See, here's what I think, Mr. Johnson. I think you came here angry because you felt disrespected. And you're right. Paulie Rizzo disrespected you. He took your money and hid like a coward. That's wrong. Then help me. But killing me doesn't fix that disrespect. Dean continued, his voice gaining strength. It just adds another layer of wrong to the situation. It makes you the man who shot an unarmed entertainer in a soundproof room because you couldn't find the actual coward who wronged you. Bumpy's eyes narrowed. Choose your next words carefully. I'm choosing them very carefully, Dean said, because I'm trying to save both our lives here. You pull that trigger, and yeah, I'm dead, but you know what else happens? Frank Sinatra doesn't stop until he finds out who killed me. The FBI gets involved because I'm a public figure. Every newspaper in America runs a story. Your name gets connected to my murder. The heat becomes unbearable. I've dealt with heat before. Not this kind. Not celebrity heat. Not the kind where middle America decides you're the villain who killed Dean Martin. You're smart enough to know that. You're too smart for this. For the first time, Bumpy seemed to hesitate. The gun was still pointed at Dean's chest, but the absolute certainty had faded from his eyes. When I stood up to Vic Duca, Dean continued, pressing his advantage, I didn't do it because I was brave. I did it because I looked at Sammy's face and I saw my brother. Not my friend, my brother. And I knew that if I didn't stand up for him, I'd lose something more important in my life. I'd lose my ability to look at myself in the mirror. This isn't about race, Bumpy said, but his voice was less certain now. No, it's about brotherhood. It's about recognizing that we're all in this together. You, me, Sammy, Frank, even Paulie Rizzo. We're all just trying to survive in a world that's trying to kill us in different ways. Your way involves guns and territory. My way involves songs and smiles. But we're both just men trying to maintain our dignity. Dignity doesn't pay debts. No, but violence doesn't guarantee payment either. You shoot me, you don't get your money. Paulie still hides. The debt still exists. All you've done is add murder to the list of problems. Bumpy stared at Dean for a long, tense moment. His finger was still on the trigger. Dean's life hung on the decision this man was about to make. I called you brother, Dean said softly, because I want you to remember that you're not just what you do. You're not just a Bumpy Johnson who collects debts and demands respect through violence. You're also the man who reads Shakespeare, who protected Harlem, who has principles. That man wouldn't shoot me. That man is better than this. The silence stretched. Dean could hear his own heartbeat, loud in his ears. He'd said everything he could say. Now it was up to Bumpy to decide what kind of man he wanted to be. Slowly, so slowly that Dean almost didn't dare breathe, Bumpy lowered the gun. You got guts, Martin, Bumpy said, his voice rough with emotion. Stupid guts, but guts. Dean felt his legs go weak with relief, but he kept his expression calm. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. I still have a problem. Then let's solve it differently, Dean said, not with my help delivering Paulie to you, but with my help making sure Paulie faces his responsibilities like a man. Give me 24 hours. I'll find him. I'll talk to him, and I'll convince him to make this right. No threats, no violence, just a conversation about doing the right thing. And if he refuses, then I step aside and let you handle it your way. But at least give me a chance to try my way first. Bumpy studied Dean's face, looking for deception or weakness. Finding neither, he slowly put the gun back in his holster. 24 hours. But Martin, if you warn Paulie to run, if you help him escape, then you and I are going to have a very different conversation. I won't warn him to run. I'll warn him to face his debts. Why would you do that? Why would you help me at all? Dean smiled, a genuine smile. Because you called yourself my brother, even if you didn't mean to. And brothers help each other, even when it's complicated. The resolution. 22 hours later, Paulie Rizzo walked into the Sand Hotel's private room, where Bumpy Johnson was waiting. His face was pale, his hand was shaking, but he walked involuntarily. Dean Martin had found him hiding in a motel on the edge of town. Dean had sat with him for 3 hours, talking, explaining, and ultimately convincing him that running would only make things worse. Paulie had embezzled money from Bumpy's organization, thinking he'd never have to pay it back. Now he was facing the consequences. The meeting between Bumpy and Paulie lasted an hour. Dean wasn't present. He'd done his part by bringing them together. When it was over, Paulie walked out alive, but significantly poorer. He'd agreed to a payment plan that would take him years to complete, but his life had been spared. Bumpy Johnson found Dean in the backstage area before the night show. Your 24 hours just saved a man's life. He's paying you back? Every cent, with interest. It'll take time, but he'll honor it. Dean nodded. Thank you for giving him the chance. Thank you for giving me a different option than violence. Bumpy extended his hand. You were right, Mr. Martin. I am somebody's brother. My sister would have been ashamed if I'd killed you over money and pride. Dean shook his hand firmly. We all have people we don't want to disappoint. That word you used, brother, it hit me harder than I expected. My whole life, I built walls between me and people like you. Different worlds, different rules. But when you said that word, those walls felt unnecessary. Maybe they are, Dean said. Maybe we've all been building walls when we should have been building bridges. Bumpy smiled, a real smile, not the cold calculation Dean had seen before. You're dangerous, Martin. Not because you have a gun, but because you have this way of making people question themselves. That's more dangerous than any weapon. I prefer to think of it as giving people credit for being better than they think they are. Well, you gave me that credit, when I had a gun pointed at you. That took either tremendous courage or tremendous stupidity. I prefer tremendous courage." Bumpy laughed, a sound that seemed foreign to him but genuine. "Fair enough." He turned to leave, then paused. "If you're ever in Harlem, look me up. I owe you a proper drink. And if you're ever back in Vegas, the show's on me." They parted ways. Two men from completely different worlds who found common ground in the most unlikely circumstances. Legacy. 3 years later, in 1967, Dean Martin received news that Bumpy Johnson had suffered a heart attack. He wasn't expected to survive. Dean sent flowers to the hospital with a note that read simply, "To my brother, get well soon." Bumpy did survive that heart attack, though he died the following year. But before he died, he sent Dean a letter. It was handwritten, personal, and Dean never showed it to anyone. But those who knew Dean said he kept that letter in his dressing room for the rest of his career, reading it before shows when he needed to remember why he did what he did. The incident in the soundproofed room remained a secret for years. Neither man spoke of it publicly, but in the criminal underworld and in the entertainment circles of Las Vegas, stories began to circulate. Stories about how Dean Martin had talked down Bumpy Johnson with a single word. Stories about how brotherhood had defeated violence. Stories about two men finding respect in the middle of a deadly confrontation. Frank Sinatra eventually learned the truth, and he was simultaneously furious and proud. "You could have been killed, you idiot," he'd shouted at Dean. But then he'd added quietly, "But that took guts, real guts." Sammy Davis Jr. understood it better than anyone. "You did for Bumpy what you did for me that night with Vic Duca," he told Dean. "You reminded him that he was human, not just powerful. That's your gift, Dean. You see people, not just their reputations." Dean never thought of himself as brave or special. He'd simply done what felt right in the moment. When faced with violence, he'd chosen conversation. When faced with death, he'd chosen dignity. And when faced with a man holding a gun, he'd chosen to see a brother instead of an enemy. That's what the word brother had done. It had stripped away all the layers, the criminal reputation, the entertainment career, the racial divisions, the social barriers. It had reduced two complex men to their essential humanity. And in that humanity, they'd found something neither expected, mutual respect. The story became part of Vegas legend, whispered about in late-night conversations between performers and mobsters alike. It represented something rare and precious in a city built on cynicism and greed. The possibility of choosing something better, even when the easier choice was violence. Years after both men had died, a journalist asked Dean's daughter Deanna about the incident. She confirmed it had happened, but said her father had made her promise never to give details while certain people were still alive. Dad always said that what mattered wasn't that he'd faced down a dangerous man, she explained. What mattered was that he'd helped two men find a better solution than violence. He was prouder of saving Paulie Rizzo's life than he was of his own courage. That was Dean Martin in a nutshell, more concerned with others than himself, more interested in solving problems than in taking credit, and more committed to human dignity than to his own safety. September 17, 1964. The night Bumpy Johnson pulled a gun on Dean Martin in a soundproof room at the Sand Hotel. The night a single word, brother, changed everything. The night that two men from different worlds found common ground in their shared humanity. It wasn't the songs or the movies or the fame that defined Dean Martin's legacy. It was moments like this, moments when he chose empathy over fear, conversation over violence, brotherhood over self-preservation. That's what makes a person legendary. Not what they accomplish when everything's easy, but what they choose when everything's on the line. Dean Martin faced death and chose to see his killer as a brother. And in doing so, he saved not just his own life, but the soul of the man who'd almost forgotten he had won. That's a story worth telling. That's a moment worth remembering. That's what brotherhood really means.